Hey everybody, welcome back to Walking with Jesus Daily. This is the recording for day 256. We are going to finish up John chapter 11 today, starting in verse 45, going to the end of the chapter. We just witnessed something pretty incredible, and I say that, going to 57 is the last verse. I say witness something pretty incredible because in this journey we are walking with Jesus daily. So we are in the places that he is. We are going the places that he goes. We are seeing the things that he does. And it would be easy to be a skeptic over and over and over again. It would be easy for us to say that's not real. That was set up. That was Lazarus wasn't actually dead. He was all part of this bigger ploy or plan to make it look like he was dead, but he was just in there waiting for Jesus to call him out, and he was faking it, and, all of these kind of things. And truth of the matter is, Lazarus was dead, and Mary and Martha were hopeless. They were without hope of his existence. And that's kind of where we leave off here. What we saw is unbind him and let him go. And I've never, until yesterday, I had never seen or thought about how this relates to the resurrection and life and sin and I don't know, all those things. But now I can't unsee it, So in verse 43, Jesus says with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." And then in verse 44, it says, "The man who had died came out. His hands and feet bound with linen strips, face wrapped with a cloth." Then Jesus says, "Unbind him and let him go." And that picks up where we are here. I just hope that you have had some time to spend in prayer. I don't know why my morning has gone the way it has, but I have not been able to stop praying. I have not even knowingly been doing it. I've just been in a constant state of prayer. I don't know, from my spirit calling out to God. I don't know why. But I do love it, and I do just want to be in a place of thankfulness, like we read yesterday. Before Jesus did anything amazing, he gave thanks, and we should do the same thing. ESV, pardon me, starting in verse 45 of John chapter 11. Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary had seen what he did, and had seen what he did. So those that went with Mary and saw what had happened believed in him. Many believed in him. But, there's our but, some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. So the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered the council and said, "What are we to do? For this man performs many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him." Okay, there's one. Everyone will believe in him. And the Romans will come and take away both our place and our nation. Where is their faith in God in this? All right, moving on. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is better for you that one man should die for the people, not that the whole nation should perish." Now, verse 51, he did not say this of his own accord, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation. Isn't that crazy? Like, did you know that the high priest was given a prophecy about Jesus, but didn't know why or what it meant? It says, and not for the nation only, but also to gather into one the children of God who are scattered abroad. So, from that day on, they made plans to put him to death. From this day forward, now let's just make sure we're understanding something. Since Jesus went and visited his friends who he loved and raised Lazarus from the dead so that they would believe that he is the Son of God, they're going to put him to death. Just making sure we understand what's happening here. Jesus, therefore, no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there to the region near the wilderness, to a town called Ephraim, and there he stayed with the disciples. Now, the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and many went up from the country to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. They were looking for Jesus and saying to one another as they stood in the temple, "What do you think? That he will not come to the feast at all?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was, he should let them know so that they might arrest him. Interesting, right? An elaborate plan and plot by the religious leaders, by the very people who were supposed to be prepared to receive Jesus, anoint him as king. He was already anointed by God, right? And take his good news to all the world. Instead, there's a plot to kill him, to eradicate the problem. All right, let's check this out from the Passion Translation. I'm interested in hearing what this sounds like from here. All right, unwrap him and let him loose. End of 44. End of 45. From that day forward, many of those who had come to visit Mary believed in him, for they had seen with their own eyes this amazing miracle. But a few went back to inform the Pharisees about what Jesus had done. I don't know how we get into this conversation a lot. It's how can you not believe? when there's so much evidence, how can you not believe? And it's really just a choice, isn't it? You choose to believe or not believe because you choose to believe or not believe, right? It's completely up to you what you have chosen to believe or not believe. But to witness a dead person coming out of the grave, out of a tomb, wrapped in the burial cloths, and to witness him being called out of the tomb and him just walking out and unbound, I think at the very least you'd be asking a lot of questions. And if those questions had answers, and those answers led to Jesus, and Jesus led to the Father, and you put all the pieces together, you'd have to really not want him to be the Messiah. I wonder if we do that. I wonder if we decide on Jesus and we're searching for him the whole time, but there are certain parts about him that we just don't like or want. I mean, I'm not going to lie, there are things that he said and taught that I kind of wish he didn't in the flesh. I'm thankful that he did. I'm thankful for his incredible love, but there are parts that I really, that are hard, right? Many believed, but a few went back to inform the Pharisees about what Jesus had done. So the Pharisees and the chief priests called a special meeting of the high council. Now, I believe this would have been the Sanhedrin, but I could be wrong. Hang on, there's a note here. Or the Sanhedrin. Okay, good deal. This was the Great Sanhedrin, equivalent to a Jewish court, which would be comprised of 70 men who would judge Jewish religious matters. All right, so 70. It's an interesting number. 70 times 7, he sent out the 70. Okay. Maybe. Does that have something to do with the Sanhedrin? I don't know. So, the Sanhedrin meets. They come together, they ask this question: what are we going to do about this man? Look at all the great miracles he's performing. Thousands of miracles. They say, if we allow him to continue like this, and look at what power they've given themselves. If we allow him to continue like this, everyone will believe in him. We got to protect the people, guys, right? We can't let them be fooled by this teacher of love and forgiveness. We can't let the people are not smart. They depend on us as their leaders. We were put here for a reason. We have to protect them from this man who is tricking them with his magic. It says, and the Romans will take action and destroy both our country and our people. If they keep shouting Hosanna in the streets, if they keep proclaiming a king, Rome will come. Because remember, the emperor at this time was supposed to be the son of God, or of the gods. Self-proclaimed, by the way. Didn't really get any confirmation on that one. Didn't really see any signs and wonders either, except that he killed a lot of people and took what they had. I guess that's a sign that you're not a very nice person, that you're deceived, I guess. But all right, back to it, because this is interesting. This is this special council, the Sanhedrin, the best of the best coming together. All right. So it says, now Caiaphas, the high priest, for that year, spoke up. Now, the high priest was a big deal. You were supposedly, anointed, chosen by God. You were the one that would go into the Holy of Holies once a year to be before the presence of God. I'm going to be honest with you. It's not a job that I would want over this people. People ask often when we're discussing what the Jewish nation was like, what were Pharisees, what were scribes, what were lawyers, what were Sadducees, who was the Sanhedrin, all of these things. And I can't help but kind of compare it to today's political system of senators and Republicans and special counsels or a president, these kind of things to some extent or the other. So with that being said, to look at it from that standpoint, because the law that was given to Moses was the law that they lived on. So it says, now Caiaphas, the high priest that year, spoke up and said, "You don't understand a thing. Don't you realize we'd be much better off if this one man were to die for the people than for the whole nation to perish?" It says, you guys don't get it. Let me explain it to you. It's better for him to die than for the whole nation to perish. Now, it says this prophecy that Jesus was destined to die for the Jewish people didn't come from Caiaphas himself. This wasn't a self-proclamation, but he was moved by God to prophesy as the chief priest. I find this very interesting. So the Jews, the religious leaders, are terrified of Rome, one. They're terrified of their positions, two. And Caiaphas has received a prophecy from God. It's legit. It is from God that one man will die. One man will die, and this is the man. You are the man. So that the whole nation will not perish. Well, yes, that is one thing, but the nation's going to perish anyway. Just a couple decades away. So, again, in verse 51, this prophecy that Jesus was destined to die for the Jewish people didn't come from Caiaphas himself, but he was moved by God to prophesy as the chief priest. God speaking through Caiaphas, the one who was going to condemn Jesus to death. And Jesus' death would not be for the Jewish people only, but to gather together God's children scattered around the world and unite them as one. So from that day on, they were committed to killing Jesus. For this reason, Jesus no longer went out in public among the Jews, but he went in the wilderness to a village called Ephraim, where he secluded himself with his disciples. It says the Aramaic could be translated the fortress city of Ephraim, because I guess Ephraim means double fruitfulness, which I did not know. Some believe the location is the present town of, I cannot pronounce it, Caiaphas, which would make it about 14 miles northeast of Jerusalem. Okay. So, to put that in perspective, you've got where Jesus is from, the Sea of Galilee area, is about 70 miles northeast of Jerusalem. All right. So Jesus is secluded in this area. Now, the time came for the Passover preparations, and many from the countryside went to Jerusalem for their ceremonial cleansing before the feast began. So many from the countryside went to Jerusalem, and all the people kept looking out for Jesus, expecting him to come to the city. They said to themselves, while they waited in the temple courts, "Do you think that he will dare come to the feast?" They know this hostility is rising. They wonder, is Jesus going to come? Will he show up? The anticipation for this year's Passover is probably through the roof. There are probably many who are sick or hurting that have come to be healed. The Passover was one of 3 Jewish festivals or feasts where every male had to go. And should technically want to. It was to remember God passing over, angel of death passing over the Jewish nation, and killing the firstborn of the Egyptians after all the other plagues. They had unleavened bread because they were ready to run. There was no time for the bread to be leavened. They had everything packed up. You can read about the Passover, but Jesus changes everything about it at the Passover meal. And we'll get there. It says in verse 57, to close out the Passion Translation, "For the leading priests and the Pharisees had given orders that they be informed immediately if anyone saw Jesus, so they could seize him and arrest him." It was no longer conversation time or question time. It was action time. All right, last one here. Amplified. "So then, many of the Jews who had come to be with Mary and who were eyewitnesses to what Jesus had done believed in him, but some of them went back to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done," because there's always that guy. "So the chief priests and Pharisees convened a council of the leaders in Israel and said, 'What are we doing? For this man performs many signs, attesting miracles. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our holy place, the temple, and our nation. But one of them that were at this high council, right, Caiaphas, who was the chief priest that year, it also says that high priests from AD 18 to 36, Annas, his father-in-law, was officially high priest only from AD 7 to 14. But he exercised great influence and power during the term of Caiaphas. Okay. So if we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our holy place, the temple, and our nation. But one of them, Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year, the year of Christ's crucifixion, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you understand that it is expedient and politically advantageous for you that one man die for the people, and then that the whole nation not perish." So even though this is bad for Jesus, this is good for business. All right? Now, he did not say this simply on his own initiative. Kind of puts Caiaphas down a bit, right? Kind of is like, hey, he didn't realize this on his own. This was given to him by God. But being the high priest that year, he was unknowingly used by God and prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation. And not only for the nation, but also for the purpose of gathering together into one body the children of God who have been scattered abroad. So from that day on, they planned together to kill him. Now there are some notes here we'll look at in Isaiah, okay? For that reason, Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews. All right, so they've decided to arrest and kill him. Jesus knows about this, so he stays out of town. It says he left there and went to the district that borders the uninhabited wilderness. Isn't it interesting that Jesus finds shelter or refuge in the wilderness? He finds refuge in the very place that people would go away from because there is no refuge. To a town called Ephraim, and he stayed there with the disciples. Now the Passover of the Jews was approaching, and many from the country went up to Jerusalem before Passover to purify themselves ceremonially so that they would be able to participate in the feast. So they were looking for Jesus as they stood in the temple area and saying among themselves, "What do you think? Will he not come to the feast at all? Where is he?" Now the chief priests and the Pharisees had given orders that if anyone knew where he was to report it so that they might arrest him. They were no longer hiding. They were no longer working in the shadows. It was time to arrest him. It was time to end this. Now, Isaiah 53:8 and 49:6. I know, you thought we were done. Hold on. Isaiah 53 is fire, by the way, but verse 8 says, "After oppression and judgment, he was taken away. And as for his generation, his contemporaries, who among them concerned himself with the fact that he was cut off from the land of the living by his death, for the transgression of my people, to whom the stroke of death was due." And in Isaiah 49:6. He says, "It is too trivial a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the survivors of Israel. I will also make you a light to the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth." All right. Spiritual implications of this lesson. There is a great amount of evil that can come from your heart if you do not choose to be holy. If you are witnessing incredible things that are brought about by Jesus in the lives of others and in your own life, if you are witnessing these things but refusing to fully believe and live a life that appears as though you fully believe, if you do not fully believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and your life does not reflect that belief by the actions and the way that you live, just pray that you repent. Pray that you return to God. Because if you've allowed sin to have a spot in your heart, it will eat at you. And not only will you not like some of the things that Jesus teaches and says, but you'll begin to actually dislike him and dislike God's way. Look at the steps that took place in the lives of the Pharisees. Look at where they came from and where they went. Right? They came from questioning him to wanting to arrest him after trying to stop him, to now wanting to put him to death. God even gave this prophecy to Caiaphas, maybe one of the last prophecies, or the last prophecy. If you have given yourself over to evil, and that is what you have chosen, God will not force you to come back to good, nor will he try to convince you. You may have people in your life that are trying to do that. God's never left your side. But if you're choosing evil, you can't change your mind. You have to know what truth is. You have to believe the things that you see and believe that God is the reason for it. If you've believed anything else, the power of medicine, that's hilarious. Coincidence, hilarious. Whatever you might want to say. All hilarious. And it will begin in your heart, and it will turn into something that you never meant for it to be. You cannot give sin a stronghold of any part of your life, especially any part of your thoughts. It is not up to you if something continues on or not in the lives of other people or in a country. People always do this thing. They're like, one vote makes a difference. Let's be real for just a second. One prayer goes so much further than a million votes. And let me explain to you, because if you are righteous and seeking God with your whole heart, and God hears your prayer and your prayer lines up with His will because your will is His will, God's going to allow whoever He wants to be in power. The hearts of those that have chosen evil, He'll allow to choose evil. And the hearts of those that have chosen Him, He will gather up. What He already knows. So just go be holy. There may be a time where we're not able to openly walk among people as believers of Jesus, where we have to hide in underground churches like they're doing all over the world. Jesus had to hide Himself with the disciples for a period of time. This may be a part of our life, but until it is, we have to shine brighter. The world must know there is good news. And there's good news for us too as believers, that Jesus is coming. They were looking for Him at the feast. We are looking for Him in the sky. He is coming. He's not leaving us. There's no one that can overcome Him. Even though the plans made here were evil, God works all things together for good. Because He is God. And He is good. I love you guys. I'll see you tomorrow.